Well, hey there, listeners. Welcome back to the Brand Marketing Show. I am your host, Kath Langman. And if you are listening to this in early November, I have a question for you. How are those ad costs treating you right now? Yeah, I thought so. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. If you've been running ads in the past few weeks, you probably noticed that your costs have gone absolutely mental, and it's only going to get worse as we head deeper into Black Friday and Christmas territory. So, today in this episode, we need to talk about something that a lot of e-commerce brands are really falling short on, and it is costing them literally thousands of dollars every single month. And it is email marketing, but not the spray and pray kind where you send a newsletter once a month and just hope for the best. I'm talking about the more strategic and largely automated revenue generating email marketing that works while you're sleeping, walking the dog, or binge watching your favorite next Netflix series. And by the end of this episode, I hope that you're going to understand exactly why if your current approach is really spending hard on certain digital ad platforms, the two big ones, as pretty much your only traffic generating and sales generating strategy right now. Doing so is just leaving so much money on the table. And more importantly, what can you do about it before we hit the end of this year? Next year. Do you know next year's 2026? How incredible is that? So grab your coffee. I've got mine. It's nearly empty. Settle in and let's dive in. So let's start with the elephant in the room, Q4 ad costs. And look, if you've been in the e-commerce game for more than 5 minutes, you probably know and have experienced that November and December and even October, when ad costs go from manageable to, oh my God, are you kidding me right now? It's kind of like watching a property auction in Sydney. Everyone's kind of bidding against each other. Prices are climbing higher and higher, and even the winner ends up paying way more than the thing is actually worth. Except, of course, in this case, you're all fighting for the same eyeballs on Facebook and Instagram, and Meta is laughing all the way to the bank. So here is what's happening. Every single e-commerce brand on the planet is simultaneously throwing money at paid ads, desperately trying to capture their slice of the holiday shopping pie. And because everyone's doing it at the same time and in much bigger volumes and with much bigger budgets, the cost per click, the cost per conversion, per acquisition, everything just skyrockets. Now, I'm certainly not saying that you shouldn't run ads in Q4. If you've got products people want to buy at this time of year, then absolutely you should be visible. But, here's the problem. If you are relying solely on paid ads to drive your sales, you are basically burning cash just to stay in the race. And here's the really frustrating part, in my opinion, and what I really want you to hear today. Most brands are so obsessed with chasing new customers at these increasingly ridiculous acquisition costs that they completely neglect the gold mine sitting right in front of them. And of course, I'm talking about their existing customer database. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. When was the last time that you looked at your new versus returning customer revenue split? Like really pulled up the data in your Shopify dashboard or elsewhere and really looked and analyzed it. And if you're like most e-commerce founders that I talk to, the answer is probably never. Or maybe I think that I looked at it once when I set up my store, or maybe just eyeballing that returning customer rate at the top of your analytics dashboard. And look, I get it. It's not the sexiest metric in the world. New customer acquisition is far more exciting. It feels like growth. It feels like you're building something. But here's the reality. You're spending 80% of your time, energy, and budget trying to acquire new customers, while the customers you already have, the ones who already bought from you, already liked what they got and are already primed to buy again, are just kind of sitting there in your email database, largely being ignored. which, in my opinion, is like throwing a massive party to meet new people while ignoring all your actual friends who are standing there wanting to hang out with you. It just doesn't make any sense, right? All right, so let's talk some numbers for a second as well, because this is where things can get really interesting. It costs between 5 to 7 times more to acquire a new customer than it does to sell to an existing one. 5 to 7 times is a lot. So let's think about that. Let's say, for example, you're spending $50 to acquire a new customer through paid ads right now. And honestly, if you're only spending $50 to get a conversion in November, you're doing actually pretty well. So you could be spending less than $10 to get that same customer to buy from you again, but it actually gets better than this. Existing customers don't just cost less to convert, they also spend more per transaction. They're more likely to buy full-priced items instead of waiting for a discount. They're more likely to add extra items to their cart. They're way more likely to become those passionate brand advocates who tell everyone about you. And so your customer database isn't just a list of email addresses that you occasionally send a newsletter to. It's literally money sitting in a bank account that you're potentially just not withdrawing from. And the crazy thing is that most brands know this intellectually, but they're not actually doing anything about it or doing very little about it. They're still throwing all their resources at new customer acquisition, wondering why their profit margins are so thin and why they're sitting on this constant hamster wheel of needing to spend more to make more. Now, some of you might be thinking right now, but Catherine, I do send marketing emails. I send emails to my list, and that, fantastic. But let me ask you this, what percentage of your revenue comes from email? And I don't mean the revenue from that one big promotional email that you might have sent during your last sale. I mean, consistently, month after month, what proportion of your total revenue is generated by your email database? And if it's less than 30%, you are leaving some serious money on the table. And the other question, how much of that email revenue is coming from your repeat purchases versus your first-time buyers? Because if you're only using email to convert people who clicked on your ad, visited your website but didn't buy, i.e., your new subscriber sequence, your abandoned cart sequence, and, then maybe they finally purchased after you sent them an email. Sure, that's absolutely better than nothing, but you're still just using email as a band-aid for your customer acquisition funnel instead of using it for what it's actually really brilliant at, building customer loyalty and driving repeat purchases. So what's the solution here? Because, I'm not going to just tell you what's wrong without giving you a path forward. The brands who are absolutely crushing it right now, the ones who aren't so stressed about ad costs, the ones who aren't panicking about whether they'll hit their revenue targets, they've built marketing systems that generate revenue automatically. They're not constantly feeding the ad spend beast. They're not scrambling to create new content every single day. They're not lying awake at night wondering where the next month's sales are going to come from. They've set up proper email marketing systems, and specifically they're using Klaviyo. Now, I know I talk about Klaviyo a lot on this podcast, and yes, we do specialize in helping brands implement Klaviyo strategies. So you might think that I'm biased here, but here's the thing. I recommend Klaviyo because it actually works. Now, full disclosure, if you are never going to put any kind of effort into using your database, it would certainly be overkill. But if you really want to build a profitable, scalable, growing business in e-commerce, it really is the bee's knees. It's built specifically for e-commerce. It integrates with all of your store data. It allows you to segment your audience based on actual behavior, not just demographic guesses. And most importantly, it enables you to set up so many automated flows that really nurture relationships and drive those ongoing purchases without you having to manually send every single email. Like literally taking your customers from a first-time order into becoming long-term loyal customers who consistently spend with you over and over again. So let me give you a real example from one of our clients, and they came to us not very long ago, a few months back, and their email marketing was let's just say it was fairly non-existent. They had Klaviyo installed, but they really weren't using it at all. In fact, I don't think they'd even sent a promotional email campaign. They might have sent once or two, once or twice. But there was, definitely no real strategy behind it. And their revenue from email was sitting at a very, very low percentage, as you can imagine. And almost, if not all of that, was coming from their campaign emails, the ones that they, broadcast out to their whole list. And what that means is if they didn't sit down and write an email, then no revenue was being generated from that channel. Fast forward 2 months, 3 months after implementing a proper Klaviyo strategy with us, and their revenue attributed to Klaviyo increased by 106%. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Let me say that again. 106% increase in 2 to 3 months. And here's the really juicy part. And what I really want you to pay attention to is that 25% of that revenue is coming from their automated flows. And so that's money being made for them while they're literally doing anything else, sleeping, spending time with their family, working on product development, living their life. It's not just that. It's not just about the revenue number. Their repeat customer rate has gone up. Their average order value has increased, and their customer lifetime value, the total amount a customer spends with them over their entire relationship, has significantly improved as well. And so this is what happens when you stop obsessing over new customer acquisition and start building actual relationships with the customers that you already have. Now, here's where it can get even more interesting and something that a lot of brands completely miss when they are thinking about email marketing. They think of email as just another revenue channel and also as another expense, for the software. And it's like, okay, we've got paid ads bringing in revenue, we've got organic social, we've got, email, and they all contribute to the total. But that's not actually how it works. Email marketing, when done properly, doesn't just add revenue on top of your other channels. It fundamentally transforms the profitability of all your other marketing, especially your paid ads. So let me walk you through the math here, because once you see this, first, you can't unsee it, but you're going to look at your ad spend completely differently. So let's go back to the earlier scenario. Let's say you're spending $50 to acquire a customer through paid ads right now, which, like I said before, you're doing really well in Q4 if that's all you're spending per conversion. And, potentially on the conservative side, depending on your industry or product category. So that customer makes their first purchase. Let's say they spend $75. Great. You've got a 1.5 times return on your ad spend, which feels okay. Barely profitable once you factor in your product costs and other overheads. Maybe 15 to 20% of those customers come back to buy again at some point. So your customer lifetime value ends up being around $120 maybe. So if you spent $50, you made $120 over time, which is not terrible, but it's also not amazing, right? And it certainly doesn't give you a lot of room to scale your ad spend or, really survive the expensive advertising periods like we're in right now. And so this is where a lot of brands get stuck. And, they're looking at their paid ads thinking this is barely profitable. I really can't afford to spend more. I can't scale, but also I kind of can't afford not to spend because everyone else is in the game. And, it can end up that you're staring down a future where you're constantly spinning your wheels, but not taking anything home. But let's look at what happens when you implement a rock solid Klaviyo strategy like our client just did. You're still spending that same $50 to acquire that customer, and they still make that same first purchase of $75. But now here's what's different. Within a week, they receive, their post-purchase email sequence that thanks them, maybe educates them on getting the most out of their purchase and suggests some complimentary products. Obviously this is going to go out over a few weeks. And they make a second purchase of $80. Maybe a couple of months later, another flow might catch them. It could be a browse abandonment flow. It could be a replenishment flow. It could be a, cross-sell or upsell flow. getting them to try something else in your range, and they buy again, $65. Maybe 3 months down the track, your replenishment flow reminds them that it's time to reorder whatever they bought the first time, another $75. 6 months later, they haven't been back in a little while. So your win back flow re-engages with them with a really compelling reason to return, and they buy again, $90. And there's so many more scenarios like this, right? But that's just a handful just to start with here. And so let's add that all up. $75, $80, $65, $75, and $90, 5 purchases. And yes, I have these figures in front of me. My my mental arithmetic is not that quick, but it's $385. So you spend $50 to acquire that customer, and now they're worth $385 to your business. And so your return on that ad spend just went from 1.5 times to 7.7 times. So let me say that again. The exact same paid ad traffic, the exact same customer acquisition cost, but now you are extracting nearly 8 times more value from every dollar that you spend on ads. That's not just a little bit better, that's a complete transformation of your business economics. And here's where it gets even better. When you know your customers are worth $385 instead of $120, you can now afford to spend more, maybe even up to $100 to acquire them and still be highly profitable. So what does that mean? What it means is that you can confidently outbid your competitors who are stuck thinking that customers are only worth $120. So they tap out at $60 cost per acquisition because they can't afford more. And you're just getting started. It means you can scale your ad spend much more aggressively because you've got the margins to do it and the cash flow. It means that you can test new creatives, new audiences, new platforms without being so cost constrained. And it means that you can survive and thrive during the more expensive periods like Q4, when so many other brands are panicking about ad costs and pulling back their budgets. And it's not just about the revenue number. Their repeat customer rate has gone up, their average order value has increased, their customer lifetime value, the total amount of a customer spends with them over their entire buying relationship has significantly improved. And this is what happens when you stop obsessing over new customer acquisition and start building those actual relationships with the customers that you have. And of course, this is why I get so passionate about email marketing, because it is not just another channel that adds a bit of revenue here and there. It is the foundation that makes everything else profitable. I once had a mentor say to me years ago when I was early in my career, if you learn how to write emails that sell, you will always be able to make money. And it is so true. Your paid ads aren't really working or not working based on what they cost or what that first purchase is. They're working or not working based on the lifetime value of the customers that they bring in. And that lifetime value is almost entirely determined by what happens after the acquisition, which is where your email marketing comes in. So when people ask me something like, should I invest in improving my email marketing or should I spend more on ads? My answer is usually always fix your email marketing first, because that's what actually makes your ads more profitable. A rock solid Klaviyo strategy can improve the profitability of your paid traffic by 300 to 400%, sometimes even more than that. And it completely changes what you can afford to spend, where you can compete, and how you can scale. And this is why the brands that are winning right now aren't necessarily the ones spending the most on ads or getting the cheapest clicks. They're the ones who've built the systems to maximize the value of every customer they acquire. And so, really, this is going to massively change how you run your business. So you might be thinking at the moment, okay, Catherine, you've convinced me. Email marketing really is the foundation and it's my future. It's what's going to make my ads profitable. I get it, but how do I actually do this? What does it look like in practice? And also, you're probably thinking there's not a whole lot of time left in the year. Can I actually do anything with the time left in the year? That is exactly what we are going to dive into in part 2 of this episode next week. So in the next episode, I'm going to walk through the exact components that you really do need to build a rock solid Klaviyo strategy, from the automated flows that run 24/7 to the broadcast email approach that drives revenue without destroying your profit margins or, sending all of your emails to the spam folder, and without constant discounting all the time as well. And so we're going to talk about the biggest mistakes that brands make, especially during peak promotional periods like Black Friday and Christmas, and why the maths of discounting is far more brutal than you probably realize as well. And I'm also going to show you why, even though it is already November, that this is actually the perfect time to set this up, not the worst time. So make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. You do not want to miss part 2, and we are going to be releasing it just next week. Trust me, you are going to want to hear this before you get through the rest of this peak promotional season. But in the meantime, here's what I want you to go and do. Go and look at your numbers, pull up your analytics, check your new versus returning customer revenue split, calculate your actual customer lifetime value, not what you hope it is, but what the data shows it actually is. And then have a think about what that number could be if you had the proper flows, nurturing those customers into multiple repeat loyal customers, because that number, that's what determines whether your paid ads are profitable or not, and largely whether your entire business is profitable or not. Now, if you want to get ahead sooner rather than later and book a strategy session with us before the next episode drops, you, of course, can do that. Just head to productpreneurmarketing.com and there's a Let's Chat link in the menu. We'll put it in the show notes for this episode as well. But what we can do in one of those sessions is review your numbers together and show you exactly where your opportunities are. And we run these like real coaching sessions, guys. So, it is worth quite as much value as you would get from a full coaching session. And so it's not a sales call, is what I want to convey there. But as for this episode, part 1 of this 2-part topic series, that's it for today. And I do look forward to the next episode where we dive into exactly how to build this out, this kind of system that can potentially transform your business. I'm excited. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, and you know someone else who would really benefit from hearing all of this, please do go ahead and share it with them. Otherwise, have a fantastic week, and I look forward to being back in your ears again, as always, next week. Bye for now.